When journalists took it and made it serious, I thought it was a little bit unfair. Having said that, though, Donald Trump would come on my show, and this is why he was great. Most people, if they're having that thought, keep that pretty guarded. Not Donald. He was right into it. There was no filter. I go, Donald, Angelina Jolie, she's one of the most beautiful actresses in the world. She's a 6.
What's the real reason Melania looks like she'd rather hug a cactus than Donald these days? The answer lies in some awkward old Howard Stern tapes where Trump said some seriously cringe-worthy things about women. If you think you've heard it all about their marriage, wait until you see how these tapes are causing chaos both personally and politically. Stick around because this story just got a whole lot messier. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So did you click the subscribe button? Great. Thank you so much. Now back to the video. Remember those awkward Howard Stern interviews where Trump seemed way too comfortable talking about women as if they were furniture on sale? Well, those tapes have crawled back out of the archives, and this time they're doing more than just creating an uncomfortable pause at dinner parties. When these recordings first hit the public, a lot of people rolled their eyes, dismissed them as Trump being Trump, and shoved them into the giant pile of cringe-worthy sound bites he's produced over the years. But fast forward to today, and those tapes have gotten a whole new life, because let's be honest, in the post-Junk Me Too era, Trump's rambling locker room talk feels less funny and a lot more troubling now. For starters, these aren't just some loose comments made in bad taste, they're full-blown confessions that make your stomach twist. In one of the more infamous clips, Trump openly brags about walking into dressing rooms during beauty pageants while the contestants were half-dressed. And let's not forget the gems like him ranking women based on their looks. Spoiler alert, he magically always gave high scores to the ones closest to him. Back then, Howard Stern laughed along, and to be fair, Stern's whole shtick was letting his guests say the kind of things that would make a priest faint. But hearing Trump boast about literally invading women's private spaces to inspect the goods like he's shopping for new living room curtains—
Donald Trump, hands down, whenever you put him on the air, now this is before he was running for president, he was an open book.
We have to talk about Donald Trump. He's a big character in the book because
he was a big character on my show.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
You say one of your best guests ever.
They were fond of quoting that Donald Trump had said something to the effect that STDs were his personal Vietnam.
Yeah, not so much a laughing matter anymore. What makes this worse, and yes, there's always a worse, is that Trump didn't even seem to think twice about how outrageous those comments were. He talked like someone who assumed every man around him would eagerly co-sign his behavior. And maybe in the early 2000s, when Stern was aiming for shock and awe, people were more willing to brush this off. But times have changed. The cultural tolerance for this kind of talk has shrunk faster than Trump's approval ratings. We're living in a world where powerful men have had their careers torched for far less than what Trump casually giggled about like some smug college frat guy. Research confirms that public attitudes toward these behaviors shifted significantly post-#MeToo. A study from the Pew Research Center found that most Americans believe the movement changed perspectives on workplace behavior, consent, and accountability. Couple that with how much these tapes feed into Trump's already questionable reputation when it comes to women, and it's no wonder they're making waves again. People aren't just listening to these interviews, they're dissecting them, pulling apart every word to figure out what they say about the guy running for office while holding a mountain of past allegations on his back. Now let's talk about what these tapes expose beyond the creepy remarks. They show a glimpse into Trump's worldview, particularly how he perceives power and control. In these interviews, he wasn't just throwing out random bad takes. He was showcasing how comfortable he is using his position, whether as a wealthy businessman or the owner of a pageant, to disregard boundaries. It adds a whole new layer to his image, one that's less about the loud, superficial bravado we're all numb to, and more about the attitude behind it. It's an attitude that doesn't just feed scandals. It shapes how people see him as a leader, a businessman, and yes, even as a husband. And speaking of that last point, this isn't all staying in the realm of public perception.
Do you feel that in some way you helped make him president?
Absolutely. Because Donald would come on my show. I mean, look.
Does it make you feel bad or good?
What is it about public service? What is it that drives her? What was it like when she saw her when her husband becomes president? Like in Moby Dick, I was chasing her. She was my obsession. I wanted to see Hillary Clinton win. And I thought if she had come on the show, the way I helped Donald was I let him come on and be a personality.
The fallout is hitting his private life too. There's something telling about how these tapes are now being tied to Melania Trump's long-standing frosty persona when it comes to her husband. Sure, we've all made jokes about her refusing to hold his hand or looking like she's plotting an escape in every photo, but these tapes are pushing that narrative further. They give context to rumors about the tension in their marriage, especially when you consider Melania's well-documented obsession with her image. If Trump bragging about invading dressing rooms paints her in a humiliating light by association, you can bet she's not thrilled about that. And it's not just Melania who's quietly roasting over these comments. Public scrutiny is reignited when things like this resurface because it makes people question not just what Trump has done, but what continues to happen behind the scenes. These aren't brand new scandals. They're reminders of the baggage that has been conveniently swept under the rug over the years. People are looking at the tapes, then at Melania, and saying, wow, there's a lot more going on here than red hats and gold-plated decorations. So where does this leave things? Well, it's clear the Howard Stern interviews aren't just relics of an awkward past. They've become something much heavier. A headache Trump can't shake, and a glaring spotlight on Melania's place in this circus. People are paying attention not just to what was said, but to how it's affecting their dynamic now, years down the line. That's the thing about scandals. You can bury them for a while, but they always find a way to dig themselves back up. And this time, they're bringing the cracks in Trump's marriage into plain view. Speaking of which, Melania's reaction to all this tells its own story. And trust me, it's louder than anything Trump said on that old interview mic. While Trump's out there shrugging off the fallout from those Howard Stern tapes like they're just another episode of reality TV, Melania seems to be sending a message of her own. And no, she's not writing a tell-all or holding a press conference. Instead, the former First Lady has leaned into her trademark method of communication: silence. But that silence is saying a whole lot more than words ever could right now. Reports have surfaced that Melania is far from happy about these tapes being dragged back into the limelight, and really, who can blame her? Trump's crude comments about ranking women or barging into beauty pageant dressing rooms don't just haunt him, they come with a side order of humiliation for her, served cold. Experts argue that Melania's recent behavior, her growing detachment, her shrinking public appearances, could be a direct response to the renewed scrutiny. A woman who's built her image on poise and control doesn't exactly thrive when her husband's old words suggest she's married to a man who sees women as props. It's not just media speculation feeding this narrative, though. Body language experts have been having a field day with her recent appearances alongside Trump. According to one observer, Melania's stiff posture and lack of eye contact at public events aren't the signs of a picture-perfect couple, but a visible display of emotional distance. Another expert pointed out her habit of avoiding physical touches with Trump altogether, noting how her body language screams, "I cannot deal with this man for one more second." And honestly, watching her seemingly strategize new ways to subtly pull her hand away when he reaches for it is practically a sport at this point. But her quiet rebellion doesn't stop there. Even in moments where she'd typically be expected to stand by his side, Melania has been noticeably absent. Campaign rallies, public outings, high-profile family moments, she's taken a step back from all of them. Her absence feels deliberate, as if she's choosing to sidestep the circus that is Trump's public life altogether. For someone who famously kept a low profile during Trump's presidency, unless absolutely necessary, this might not seem like a huge departure. But when you think about how much more noticeable her distance has become since the tapes resurfaced, it paints a clearer picture of her frustration. The whispers coming out of Mar-a-Lago also add fuel to the fire. Reports suggest that the couple's rift has become so deep that Melania has moved into separate quarters within Trump's Florida resort. Let's face it, when a couple that already spends minimal time together starts retreating to separate wings, it doesn't exactly scream domestic bliss. Staff members at the sprawling estate have apparently noticed the shift too, describing how Melania keeps to herself and focuses on things like decorating her own space or spending time with their son, Barron. It's like she's carving out her own tiny territory in the gilded walls of their mansion, away from the noise Trump constantly generates. What's fascinating about all this is how Melania's silence has turned into something downright powerful. For so long, she was labeled as this quiet, ornamental figure who rarely strayed from the role of supportive spouse. But now, her refusal to engage publicly feels less like apathy and more like a statement. Experts say she's rewriting her narrative, even if she's doing it in the most passive-aggressive way possible. By stepping back and refusing to be dragged into this mess, she's signaling that she's not just defined by Trump's scandals, she's sketched out her own boundaries. Sure, silence can sometimes be seen as complicity, but in Melania's case, it feels more like resistance, subtle but very intentional. And really, this is about more than embarrassment over a few tapes. Melania's actions suggest something deeper is brewing. By all accounts, the Stern interviews dredge up a reality she's probably familiar with but has tried hard to avoid dealing with publicly. That Trump's penchant for saying wildly inappropriate things doesn't just tarnish his reputation, it reflects on hers as well. For someone who's carefully maintained an air of aloof sophistication, that's got to sting. The whole world is looking at her now, wondering how much humiliation she's willing to endure before something gives. The impact of these tapes on their marriage seems undeniable. Melania's silent retreat feels like a significant turning point, as though she's had enough of grinning and bearing it for the cameras. Of course, the ultimate question remains: will this lead to more cracks in an already fragile partnership, or is she simply biding her time before her next move? It's tempting to think that this is all part of her plan to protect herself and her son from the fallout while leaving the door open to redefine her role entirely. Her silence, absence, and detachment have become impossible to ignore. They're louder than any interview or press statement she could make. As this scandal continues to unfold, it's clear Melania is no longer content to play the role of the dutiful wife. And if this is her way of rewriting the narrative, it might just be the most interesting chapter in their story yet. Those Howard Stern tapes may have done more than just embarrass Trump. They've ripped open the seams of a marriage that spent years under a magnifying glass. Melania's silence, once mistaken for loyalty or indifference, now seems like a quiet declaration of her own narrative. Are we watching the collapse of a carefully staged front? Or is this just another act in their ongoing political soap opera? One thing is certain: as Trump waves off the chaos, Melania's silence continues to grow heavier. If he's not careful, he might notice the emptiness beside him, just a little too late.